It was a quiet Friday night in the small town of Whitlow, tucked deep in the hills of Kentucky. Sheriff Dale Morton and his young deputy, Lucas Briggs, had clocked in like usual routine patrol. Radio check-ins, and not much more than the occasional speeding call. Around 11:42 p.m., their last radio message came through. They said they were heading to check out an abandoned property on the edge of the county line, after a call about strange lights and possible trespassing. But after that, the radio went dead. No distress call, no sign of struggle. Just silence when they didn't return by morning. A search was launched. Their patrol cruiser was found parked near the old farmhouse, keys still in the ignition, headlights off. But the two men had vanished without a trace. Bloodhounds lost the scent just beyond the fence line. And despite weeks of searching by foot, air, and even cadaver dogs, not a single clue turned up. No bodies, no evidence of foul play. It became one of the most talked about cold cases in the region. Two officers gone in the middle of a shift, as if they were swallowed by the night years past. Theories spread like wildfire, everything from backwoods crime to something supernatural. But in 2021, a county land surveyor stumbled across something strange while assessing a plot near that same old farm. An outhouse weathered and sunken had collapsed in on itself, revealing something no one could have imagined after 16 long years. The surveyor, local man named Tom Driscoll, had only stopped by to mark the edge of a long-forgotten property that was about to be sold off by the county. He wasn't expecting anything out of the ordinary. But as he walked the overgrown path behind the farmhouse, his boots sank slightly into soft earth. The old wooden outhouse next to him looked like it had collapsed from age, half buried and covered in vines. Curious, he stepped closer, noticed what looked like cracked porcelain sticking out from the dirt. Authorities were called in, and soon the area was taped off. As crews carefully dug around the remains of the outhouse, what they uncovered stunned everyone. Beneath the floorboards was a concrete chamber, not part of any original structure plans. Inside, they found personal items: an old sheriff's badge, a broken flashlight, and a rotting leather belt with Dale Morton's initials still faintly visible. But there was more. The way the chamber was sealed made it clear this wasn't an accident. Someone had gone to great lengths to hide it. As forensic teams worked through the layers of earth and debris, townsfolk gathered nearby, whispering about old suspicions that never had answers. Sheriff Morton had always been respected firm, but Farrand, Deputy Briggs, fresh out of the academy, was known for following in his mentor's footsteps. No one could believe they might have been buried so close to where they vanished. But the real question now wasn't just what happened, was who had kept it buried this long. As investigators dug deeper, both literally and figuratively, more questions began to surface. The discovery of the chamber raised serious concerns. Someone had deliberately built a concealed space under a working outhouse on a property that hadn't been legally occupied for decades. Records showed the land had changed hands 3 times since 1987, but oddly, none of the owners had ever lived there or developed the property. When questioned, one former owner claimed he was paid in cash to keep it untouched. No paperwork, no real name. Just a handshake and a thick envelope. Meanwhile, Sheriff Dale Morton's daughter, now in her 30s, returned to Whitlow after hearing the news. She'd spent most of her life chasing answers that never came. Seeing her father's belongings for the first time since she was a child reopened wounds that never really healed. She mentioned something investigators hadn't known weeks before he vanished. Her father had been acting strange, distracted, distant, and just before that final shift, she remembered him receiving a call that had left him visibly shaken. The number. It was from a now-defunct line tied to the sheriff's department. The deeper they went, the stranger the story got. An old case file was discovered buried in the archives, one that Dale had opened but never closed. It involved a bootlegging ring with roots stretching back generations in that region. Some believed it had gone dormant. Others whispered it never really ended. Now, with a hidden grave and sealed secrets, the town was bracing for what might be unearthed next. The renewed investigation rattled the quiet town of Whitlow. Locals who had long buried their suspicions were now being asked to recall details from over a decade ago. One name kept surfacing: Eldon Griggs, a retired deputy who had worked under Sheriff Morton at the time. Eldon had abruptly left town weeks after the disappearance and hadn't returned since. Some claimed he'd taken an early pension and moved south for health reasons. Others said he left because he knew more than he ever admitted. Detectives tried to track Eldon down, but his last known address was a dead end. Then, a handwritten letter was anonymously dropped off at the sheriff's office. No name. Just the words, "I warned them not to dig." It was chilling, not just for what it said, but for the fact that the handwriting matched a decades-old memo in one of Dale Morton's unsolved case files. Forensics confirmed it was likely written by someone in law enforcement. Tension in the town hit a boiling point when another hidden space was discovered beneath a rusted storm shelter on the same property. This one was more secure, reinforced with old bricks and metal framing. A forensic team was brought in overnight. Neighbors gathered at the edge of the property, whispering fears about what might be inside. No one knew what they'd uncover next. But the pieces were falling into place and pointing towards something far darker than anyone had suspected. And one thing was now certain: someone had gone to great lengths to silence the truth as the forensic crew began removing debris from the storm shelter. Something unexpected emerged: an old lockbox buried beneath a false floor. Inside were dozens of photographs, some water-damaged, others still crisp. Each image captured what appeared to be private meetings, some in wooded areas, others in the back rooms of bars and farmhouses. And in nearly every photo, Sheriff Dale Morton was present. But so was Eldon Griggs and, shockingly, a former county judge who had publicly mourned the sheriff's disappearance back in '87. This changed everything. The presence of a sitting judge hinted at a larger conspiracy, one stretching well beyond local crime. Notes were scribbled on the back of several photos with initials, dates, and locations. Investigators now suspected the sheriff and deputy may have uncovered a deep network of corruption involving money laundering, illegal land sales, and protection deals likely tied to that old bootlegging ring that never really died out. What made things worse was that one of the photos appeared to show Dale Morton handing over an envelope to a man known only by his street name: Cutter, a figure rumored to have run security for the underground ring. If true, it raised the terrifying possibility that the sheriff hadn't been just an innocent victim, but maybe someone caught in between, trying to take it down from the inside. With the storm shelter now closed off for further investigation, and media circling Whitlow, the town's secrets were no longer safe. And someone still out there didn't want this truth getting any further. The final breakthrough came when state investigators ran the photos through a new facial recognition system. One of the unidentified men captured alongside Sheriff Morton, and Eldon Griggs was flagged. He was living under a false identity in Missouri, with a sealed federal record and past connections to organized crime. When brought in for questioning, he didn't deny knowing Dale. In fact, he claimed Dale had tried to cut a deal with federal agents back in 1987 to bring down the bootlegging network in exchange for witness protection for himself and Deputy Briggs. But the operation had been compromised from within. The man insisted Dale and Lucas had been lured to that farmhouse under the impression they were meeting with a federal contact. Instead, they walked into a trap. According to his account, Eldon Griggs had turned on them, pressured by powerful local figures who feared Dale would blow the whole thing open. Dale was killed on the spot. Lucas, terrified, tried to escape, but they caught him too. Both were buried beneath the outhouse as a warning to anyone else thinking of turning. But here's the twist: when the DNA results came back on the remains, They confirmed the body of Dale Morton, but the second set wasn't Lucas Briggs. Investigators believe Lucas may have escaped after all, and the man presumed dead for 16 years could still be alive, possibly in hiding. Now, a manhunt is quietly underway. And the biggest question remains: if Lucas survived, why hasn't he come back? As the truth finally surfaced, the town of Whitlow found itself grappling with the weight of long-buried secrets. Sheriff Dale Morton was honored with a proper memorial, his name cleared of suspicion. His daughter stood beside the folded flag, quietly thanking those who never stopped looking. For years, her family had lived in the shadow of silence, but now there was a sense of peace. Even if the full story had yet to be written, the discovery that the second body wasn't Deputy Lucas Briggs sent shockwaves through the investigation. Old witnesses were re-interviewed, and new leads pointed to bus stations and shelters near the state border. Some even believed Lucas might have started a new life, too scared or ashamed to return. Still, the evidence showed he may have tried. To protect Dale, that night hand may have been on the run ever since.